Chapter 1871. Soon, Gossipy received Charlie's warning letter from Tenet Media's lawyer. Even though Charlie was only a manager, his actions forced the crowd to stand by his side. #Charlie will punish his artists when they do something wrong. Remember when James was involved in a fight last time? Charlie punished him even though James's fans threatened him on the internet, so this means that he's an impartial person. I believe in what he said. Those internet trolls should grow a brain and stop speaking on hearsay. Hashtag. Do you guys still not know who Charlie is? Have any of you ever seen him backing down before? He has never gone easy on his artists when he's scolding them. James is the best example. If Daisy is really such a poser, do you think he'll issue a warning letter? Hashtag. Seeing that the tide had turned, Gossipy deleted all their posts on Twitter in less than 2 hours. At the management department in Charlie's office, Daisy knocked on the door and went inside after getting permission. Mr. Johnson. Charlie had just finished his call. He turned his chair around to look at her. I found out who was behind this. I'll leave her to you to deal with. Daisy was stunned. Soon, Mr. Gray came into Charlie's office with a female artist. Daisy looked at her, and the female artist glared at her. It seemed to Daisy that she hated her very much. Charlie asked expressionlessly, Hannah, are you aware of the consequences of doing this? Hannah bit her lips, and her eyes turned red around the rims. I don't understand why someone like her can become an actress. Just because she starred in a few films with Mr. Boucher when she was a kid? Just because her family has a good relationship with Mr. Boucher? She could have gone to other companies, so why must she come to Tenet? You've been giving her a lot of resources from the day she signed a contract with you, and I just feel bad for Ames. Daisy lowered her head. Mr. Johnson has given me a lot of resources? That's why she targeted me? Because I took away the resources that should have been for Ames? Charlie's face sank, and his gaze turned sharp. Did Amy ask you to do this? Hannah was stunned and hastily explained, No. I did it out of my own volition. It has nothing to do with Ames. I just don't like Daisy. Then who do you think you are to make a decision for Amy? Charlie rose to his feet and walked to the side with a grim face. I'm Amy's manager. If she doesn't have the capability to keep her throne as the best actress in our company, then it's her own business. The company will only allocate a fixed amount of resources. As an artist, you should fight for them, not play these dirty tricks behind other people's backs. Those who are not good enough are destined to be eliminated. Do you think the company has spent so much money on you guys just to let you do something like this? Hannah was tongue-tied and became nervous. Charlie continued, roasting her with his sharp remarks. You think you're doing Amy a favor, but you're not. When slinging mud at one of our company's artists and saying that she doesn't have a good moral, did it ever cross your mind that you don't have good morals either? In my opinion, you're even worse than Daisy. At the very least, she has put a lot of effort into honing her acting skills, but what about you? How many good projects have you brought to Tenet over the years? Have you become a popular artist after Tenet gave you so many resources? You refuse to improve yourself and think that you can get by with your exaggerated acting skills. Even I, someone who doesn't have any acting skills, can't bear to see it anymore, and you still have the guts to look down on others? This was the first time Daisy saw Charlie scolding someone. Just as the rumors said, he was ruthless and went for where it hurt the most when he was scolding someone. Hannah's face was pale, she wanted to cry, but no tears were forming in her eyes. Charlie's words sounded like knives, and she felt humiliated. Meanwhile, Amy arrived at the office. Chuck. Charlie looked at her and asked expressionlessly, What do you think about what she did? Chapter 1872. Amy's heart clutched for a moment. She knew that Charlie would suspect her after finding out what Hannah had done. Charlie knew that both of them had a good relationship, and Charlie was giving her a reminder when he talked to her that day. Therefore, there was nothing she could say when Charlie suspected her because of Hannah after Hannah's actions were exposed. She had to face it no matter what. I'm sorry. I'm the reason Hannah doesn't like Daisy. Ames. This has nothing to do with you. It's all my fault. I shouldn't have dragged you into this. Hannah was upset at herself as well. If she could have controlled herself and not let her anger get the best of her, Charlie wouldn't have suspected Amy. Charlie took a cigarette and squinted. Hannah, I want you to terminate your contract with Tenet Media. Amy was stunned. Chuck. Amy, you know me very well. I'd also do the same if you were the victim this time. As long as I'm your manager, I won't allow things like this to happen to you. This is my duty, Charlie said calmly. Seeing how calm he was, Amy knew there was no room for maneuvering in this matter. In other words, he had made a decision, and no one could change his mind. Amy looked toward Daisy and said in a hurry, Miss Vanderbilt, I apologize on behalf of Hannah, she didn't really mean it. I'm the one who started this, so I'll clear things up for you, okay? Amy. Charlie frowned and looked at her warningly. Chuck, Hannah, and I are like close sisters. She signed a contract with Tenet Media because of me. If you want to punish me, I won't say a single thing, but please, you've got to give Hannah another chance. Ames, Hannah's eyes were filled with tears. Hannah did not expect that Amy would risk everything and plead for her. Daisy looked at them, and it occurred to her that both of them were really close to each other. The entertainment industry was like a big pond with a complicated circle. Many people would not shed all pretenses of cordiality to maintain their interest. Even though they were friends on the surface, they couldn't lay their hearts bare to each other. There were very few true friends in the entertainment industry. Since Amy was willing to lower herself and help Hannah beg for mercy, it meant that her friendship with Hannah was true and not based on interest. Charlie looked toward Daisy. Daisy fell silent for a moment, and then she raised her head. Hannah, I'll give you a chance, and I want to make a bet with you. Hannah was stunned. What? If I can become the best actress in 3 years, not only will you have to apologize to me in front of all the media outlets for everything you did today, but you will also have to leave Tenet Media. However, if I can't do it, I'll retire from being an actress and announce it in front of the media. All of them were stunned. Become the best actress in 3 years? Even Helios did not have the guts to make such a promise. After all, it had taken him 6 years to receive the Best Actor award. Gritting his teeth, Charlie said, Daisy, do you know what you're talking about? Getting the Best Actress award in 3 years? Are you out of your mind? Some of the actors and actresses had to work hard all their lives to get the Best Actor award, and she wanted to get it done in just 3 years. This was the most absurd thing Charlie had ever heard. He placed his hands on his waist and said exasperatingly, Daisy, do you really want me to knock some senses into that thick skull of yours? She smiled and replied, then you should work harder and guide me well. Charlie harumphed. You said this yourself, so I'll do you a favor this time. I hope you can really stay true to your promise and do your best to get the Best Actress award in 3 years. He left his office in a huff. Amy looked at Daisy and said, Miss Vanderbilt, you don't have to do this at all. Chapter 1873. Even Amy was not confident she could get the Best Actress award in 3 years. Daisy shrugged and said, I've already made up my mind. After that, she looked at Hannah and said, so what do you think? Are you up for the challenge or not? Hannah did not know what to say. Even though she felt it was ridiculous as well and that she did not like Daisy at all, she found herself in no position to laugh at Daisy for her whimsicality after Daisy said she would quit being an actress if she failed to do what she had promised. She pressed her lips tightly and said, all right. I accept your bet. If you can do it, I'll apologize to you in front of the media and press. Daisy smiled and nodded. That's a deal then. Afterward, Daisy published a post on her Facebook. Hashtag I'll get the Best Actress award in 3 years. Hashtag her fans all left comments below the post. Did something happen to Dada? Way to go, Daisy. We have faith in you. I'm truly happy that Daisy has the aspiration to get the Best Actress award. I'll marry the best actress in 3 years. When Daisy saw that comment, she sprung up from her bed. The user did not use any avatar, and it seemed to Daisy that it was a new profile. Her profile was the only profile he was following, and his address was pointed to Yaramore. This was only one post in his profile, and it was published 10 minutes ago. Daisy knew who he was, and she sent a private message to him. Nolly? The person did not reply to her instantly. Then, she received a text message from Nolace. How did you know it's me? Daisy threw herself on the bed and replied, of course, I know it's you. Nolace replied, so, is this a yes or a no? Daisy chuckled and replied, well, it depends on your sincerity. Nolace replied, okay. Daisy giggled while holding her phone as she typed, I miss you very much. Initially, she did not plan on sending it, but her finger slipped and accidentally touched the send button. She was stunned and tapped the screen several times in an attempt to delete the message. However, Nole saw the message and replied, I saw it. Daisy was so embarrassed that she buried her face in the pillow. Ah. This is so embarrassing. What the hell am I thinking? How could I send something like that to him? 1 minute later, Nola's message came. I miss you every moment of every day. This was the last message Nole sent Daisy before he went to bed. He fixed his gaze on his phone's screensaver and stroked Daisy's cheek. The corner of his lips curled upward as he said, wait for me, Daisy. He just needed another 3 years. Once he had taken care of everything here, he would go there to see her. Meanwhile, on the other side, the light in the living room was brightly lit. Freya was guzzling down a bottle of red wine at the side of the couch while calling her phone with the house phone. Soon, Colton's deep and husky voice could be heard from the other side of the line. Yes? Resting on the couch, Freya shook the bottle of wine in her hand. With a little Dutch courage, she shouted, Colton, you bastard. Give me back my phone. Colton chuckled. Are you scolding me now, Freya? Give me back my phone. Freya continued to shout. Her voice was so sharp it nearly pierced through Colton's eardrum. He clicked his tongue and pulled his phone away from him. Why are you shouting at me in the middle of the night? How could you kiss me and take away my phone? You bastard. Freya tried to cry, but no tears could form in her eyes. Colton fell silent for a moment before asking, have you been drinking? Yes, she replied. Give me back my phone. He snorted and asked, when you're drunk, all you can think about is your phone? Freya twirled her finger around the telephone wire and pressed on. Are you giving it back or not? Colton replied, what if I don't want to? My phone is very important to me. It's as important as my laptop. Hurry up and give it back to me, she said, sounding like she was pleading, and there was a hint of coquettish tone at the edge of her voice. Chapter 1874. Colton suddenly let out a chuckle, but he soon regained his former self. Do you really want me to return your phone so much? Yes. Give me back my phone. Hurry. You want it now? Freya couldn't think straight right now, due to the alcohol. She replied, yes. Colton hung up the call, and Freya was stunned for a moment, seemingly unable to believe that Colton really had hung up on her. She called him again in a fit of rage, but Colton did not answer her call anymore. She dragged the telephone wire, causing the telephone to fall to the carpet. Then, she threw herself onto the couch and mumbled, bastard, why did you kiss me? Colton stopped the car outside the courtyard. He looked outside through the window and realized that the light in the living room was still on. He came down from the car, walked up to the door, and pressed the bell. Freya could roughly hear the ring of the doorbell. She climbed up with a dizzy head and dragged herself to the door. Who is it? Freya opened the door and leaned against it. Her vision was blurry, and a figure slowly appeared in her eyes as time passed. Colton could smell the uninviting odor of alcohol on Freya, and he frowned. You drank yourself down and disturbed me in the middle of the night just to get your broken phone back? Colton? Freya squinted, and it was only then she could barely see his face. She stretched her arm forward and said, "My phone." Colton squeezed himself into her house, and Freya tugged at his arm. "You can't come into my house. Give me back my..." She was tripped by the floor mat in front of the door and fell to the floor. Since she was clutching tightly at Colton's jacket, she pulled it off halfway. Colton sighed and took off his jacket while squatting down. He carried her into his arms and said, "It seems to me that not only do you want to take off my pants, but now you also want to take off my clothes." Freya coiled her arms around his neck when she was in the air and narrowed her eyes to look at him. She did not know if she was having a hallucination, but Colton's profile looked a lot gentler than he used to be under the light. He carried Freya upstairs and put her on her bed. Freya clutched at his clothes and said, "My phone." Colton lowered his head to look at her. Suddenly, he thought of something and placed his hands on the side of the bed. He went closer to her and said, "You want your phone? Sure, I'll give it back to you if you kiss me." Freya was stunned. She looked at the lips only an inch away from her and replied, "You promise you'll give it back to me if I kiss you?" Narrowing his eyes, Colton chuckled, "Who knows?" She had lost much of her thinking capacity due to the alcohol. She cupped her hands on his cheeks, raised her head, and kissed him. Colton was stunned for a moment, and his hands at the edge of the bed tightened. After a short while, he took control of the kiss, held the back of her head in his palm, and deepened the kiss. Both of them kissed each other passionately. Colton was losing himself in the sensation of her lips against his. He tried to deepen the kiss again, and he wanted more. He secured her tightly in his arms and trailed his lips down to her neck. Freya's chest was heaving up and down heavily. His breathing was so hot that it seemed to melt her, and she finally regained some of her senses. Colton kissed her again. Her vision turned blurry. She moved her arms from his shoulder to his back and hugged him tightly. Daisy had been working tirelessly, filming a drama for the past half a month. She no longer accepted any other jobs or hit the headlines. Many people thought she was joking when she said she was going to get the Best Actress award in 3 years. Some internet trolls even mocked her, saying she was going to buy the award with money. However, no matter how much doubt there was out there, it couldn't affect Daisy. The filming of the drama lasted for 8 months, but Daisy had finished her part in the 6th month. It was New Year's Eve tonight. Tenet Media held an early annual dinner for the company's artists. Almost all of the company's artists, executives, and agents were at the banquet. Charlie led Daisy around to familiarize herself with some of the seniors in the company. A senior chuckled and said, "You signed a contract with Tenet Media not long ago, and you spent half the year filming a drama. It looks like you're preparing yourself for the Best Actress award." Daisy smiled. "This is the first time I've taken on the female lead role. Besides, I can learn more by staying with the crew." Chapter 1875. The senior nodded. "You're right. Honing your acting skills is the basic professionalism of an actor." Daisy turned her head around and saw James, who was standing at the corner alone. He seemed uninterested in the banquet. Instead of mingling with the people, he preferred to stay alone. She walked toward James and stood behind the pillar. "Why are you hiding here?" James was stunned, and his hand froze in midair. He glanced at her through the corner of his eyes and said, "I like to stay alone." Daisy crossed her arms in front of her chest and leaned against the pillar. "Hey, don't you want to get along with the artists in the company?" He clicked his tongue and looked at the wine in his glass. "That's not necessary. After all, birds of different feathers do not flock together." Daisy was rendered speechless. James turned his head around to look at her and grinned. "By the way, I heard that you said you're going to get the Best Actress award in just 3 years. You really have a lot of guts. I'm very impressed." She said, "I'm not lying. What's so good about being the Best Actress? It's nothing but a title. Besides, your family is rich. Even if you don't become the Best Actress, you won't run out of money to spend. It's different." "How is it different?" James looked at her. Daisy lowered her head and continued. There are a lot of things you can decide for yourself if you aren't strong, though. Even though I know my brothers love me very much, if I keep staying under their protection, I'll be like a loser who can't do anything. This kind of life is not what I want. James mumbled, loser, huh? His father always said he was a loser. However, he did not think there was anything wrong with being a loser. After all, a loser would be able to live a carefree life than someone who was capable. Daisy's phone rang, and a smile appeared on her face when she saw the phone number. James scooted over and asked, who is it? Daisy raised her head and replied, my fiancé. 3 years later, at the Zlokovia Film Festival. There were a lot of reporters on the scene, and it was a sight to behold. Have you heard of it? Daisy has gotten the Best Actress award with the film Undercover, directed by Mr. Crawford. Yeah, I've heard of it. Not only has Daisy great acting skills, but she's also a very responsible actress. She didn't use any stunt double for the exploding and fighting scenes in the film, and I heard that she was injured during the shooting process. Most importantly, she played the role of a female drug lord. She's a villain, but because of her superb acting skills, she's even better than the lead actor. When Daisy and Charlie came out of the hall, the reporters all rushed up to them. They all focused the spotlight on her. She was wearing a long black dress with gold flower patterns on the hem and a set of custom-made jewelry produced by Soul Jewelry. She looked both stunning and elegant. Miss Vanderbilt, congratulations on getting the Best Actress award for the film Undercover. Do you have anything you want to share with everyone? Daisy smiled and looked at the camera holding the trophy in her hands. She looked very attractive under the camera. The way she smiled and her posture were signs that she was more confident than she was in the past. There is only one thing I want to say to those people who don't believe in me. I said I would get the Best Actress award in 3 years, and I did it. Charlie clapped his hand and lamented. It seems like I've underestimated you. Daisy turned around to look at him and chuckled. But you made the right choice of signing me to be one of your artists. He laughed. Yeah, you're right. Amy came out as well, and Hannah was following behind her. Daisy. Daisy turned around to look at her and smiled. Ames, Chapter 1876. Amy congratulated her from the bottom of her heart. Congratulations, you really did it. Hannah pouted. I've lost. I'll do as promised. Please wait here. She walked up to the reporters and announced, guys, I have something to say. I was jealous of Daisy and resented her 3 years ago, and it was my fault for maliciously defaming her back then. So I wish to apologize to her in front of the public today. She then turned to face Daisy and bowed. I'm sorry about that. I'll terminate my contract with Tenet immediately. All the reporters present were taking pictures of the scene, and the flashlights did not stop for a minute straight. Daisy walked up to her, helped her up, and said in a volume that only she could hear, after you terminate your contract with Tenet, I'll refer you to Zester Media. Hannah was astonished and stared at her. You've debuted for such a long time. I believe that you'll definitely get to come back after you go to Zester. Hannah cried and smiled at the same time and hugged her abruptly. You're such a nice person. I'll definitely not scold you in the future. Boo-hoo-hoo. After the press conference, Daisy walked to a Rolls-Royce parked in the parking lot. She opened the car door, and Colton, sitting in the car waiting for her, closed the laptop's lid and turned to look at her. Congratulations, you've won the Best Actress award. She got in the car and took a closer look at him. Colton, your temperament makes you look more and more like the CEO of a company now. Colton had returned to Zlokova 2 years ago and had taken over the Black Gold Group. Although his tongue was still as vicious as always in the past few years, he seemed to have become a lot sterner and more mature. He had also become just like their father. All he thought about all day long was work and only work. Their mother also teased him about whether he was stimulated abroad, but Daisy was also curious about what had happened to him abroad. She had asked Waylon for some information, but he did not tell her. He loosened his tie. What do you mean by me having the temperament of a CEO? Haven't I always looked like this? She smiled without uttering a single word. After a moment of silence, Colton's eyes dimmed slightly. Has Freya been contacting you? Daisy paused and stared at him suspiciously. Yeah, what's wrong? He narrowed his eyes and gave off a silent and chilling aura. Nothing. Daisy glanced at him and pursed her lips. Colton and Freya used to dislike each other, but not to this extent. I wonder what happened to them. Nowadays, Colton's emotions will turn particularly bad whenever Freya is mentioned. The same goes for Freya, who has been in contact with me for the past 3 years. As long as Colton is mentioned, she'll change the subject and avoid it immediately. Something definitely smells fishy between these two. Back at the Goldman mansion. Party poppers went off as soon as Daisy entered the mansion through the door. Ribbons and streamers were ejected into the air and scattered all over the place, and she was covered from head to toe. She then saw a group of people gathered in the house. The Bouchers and the Lucases were all there. The mansion's interior was decorated as if they were holding a banquet, and it felt extremely lively. Riley held the cake. Congratulations to Daisy for winning the Best Actress award. You're finally one step closer to your godfather. Helios chuckled. Daisy can finally stand on her own in showbiz. Nolan snorted. That's just normal, or how could she be my daughter? Barbara walked up to Daisy and pushed her. Okay, don't just stand in a daze. So many of us are here to celebrate for you. Daisy looked at this happy scene, and her eyes turned bloodshot immediately. You guys aren't here to celebrate my success. You just want to make me cry. Riley sneered and brought the cake with candles up to her. Although it's not your birthday just yet, you can still make a wish. Go ahead. Daisy put her hands together, closed her eyes, and made a wish. Everyone was included in her wish. Nolace was no exception. A week later, at Bassburg Airport. Freya dragged her suitcase out of the airport and stood at the exit. She was wearing a pair of huge sunglasses and had cut her hair to shoulder length and curled it. Chapter 1877. Daisy parked her car on the roadside and called Freya until the car door was opened from the outside. Daisy stared at the woman who got into the car and sat in the front passenger seat. You. I've only changed my hairstyle, and you already can't recognize me? Freya took off her sunglasses. Daisy smiled instantly. You actually got your hair permed? Now that she had the chance to take a better look at her, the curly hair suited Freya more than the black, long, and straight hair that she used to have. It was not an exaggerated curl, but it gave off a gentle, mature, and wild temperament. The car drove slowly on the road, and Daisy chatted about a lot of things with her. During this period, there were times when she deliberately brought up Colton and realized that Freya's expression would freeze and that she would look away. Really? Did he take over the company? Good for him. Daisy glanced at her. Freya, did something happen to you and Colton? Her expression was a little stiff. No, what in the world could have happened? You should know what our relationship looks like. Soon, she changed the subject. By the way, didn't Nolace come looking for you? He already took over Tenet Media as one of its major shareholders a month ago. Daisy suddenly stopped the car on the roadside and looked at her in surprise. What? At Tenet Media. Daisy went straight to the administrative office, and she saw a familiar figure in the corridor. It was Edison. Edison's presence could only mean that Nolace was also there. Freya really didn't lie. Seeing her, Edison smiled and nodded. Miss Vanderbilt, it's been a long time. Daisy lifted her gaze, glanced through the glass, and stared into the office. The man sitting across from the chairman looked extremely dignified and elegant. The dark blue suit emphasized his wide shoulders and well-built back, his side profile looked breathtaking, and his gaze looked as profound as usual, while they were coupled with the long eyelashes, thick eyebrows, and straight nose bridge. The man just sat there like a delicate sculpture. Edison opened the door, and the chairman stood up with a smile. "Daisy, you're here. Allow me to introduce you. This is our new shareholder, Mr. Knowles." Knowles put down the teacup, his eyes were fixed on her, and a hint of faint hilarity flashed across his pale pupils. Daisy was exasperated but wanted to chuckle at the same time. She was angry because he had been to Basberg for so long, and yet he did not get in touch with her. He even kept it a secret from her. She snorted lightly and crossed her arms. "Mr. Knowles, you do have your hands in all sorts of business, huh? Nowadays, you've even extended your claws into showbiz, huh?" The chairman was stunned and could not help but stare at the two of them. "Do you know each other?" Knowles stood up calmly and gave off a faint smirk. "Miss Vanderbilt and I have a very close relationship." The chairman returned to his senses. "I see." Suddenly, the chairman's cell phone rang, and he looked at Daisy. "Daisy, something just came up. Since you're rather close with Mr. Knowles, please help me keep Mr. Knowles entertained for now, and please don't neglect him while I'm away." The chairman then left the office. Only Daisy and Knowles were left in the office at this moment. Daisy turned her face away and ignored him. Knowles chuckled suddenly and stopped in front of her. "I haven't seen you for 3 years, and you're already the best actress in Zlokova." She snorted softly. "I too haven't seen you for 3 years, and you've become my boss." He took her into his arms and approached her. "Actually, what I want more is for you to become my wife." Daisy lifted her gaze. "Why did you hide it from me?" He rubbed the tip of her nose. "I wanted to surprise you." Daisy smacked his hand, raised her eyebrows, and sneered. "You've come here for a month and didn't even contact me for once throughout this whole time, and you've become a shareholder of Tenet in an instant just because you want to surprise me?" Knowles hugged her in his arms and smirked. "Do you want to be this calculative with me?" He pecked her on the corner of her eye and lowered his voice. "Then I'll admit my mistake now. This is all my fault, so how do you want to punish me?" Chapter 1878. Daisy stood on tiptoe and pressed her finger against his lips. "Then you're too." The ringtone of her cell phone interrupted her unfinished sentence. Daisy picked up the call and saw that it was Freya who was calling her, so she swiped the screen and answered it. However, what came from the other end of the call was Freya's screeches. "Daisy, help." The call was then interrupted. Daisy was astounded because she seemed to have heard Colton's voice too on the other end of the call. Knowles frowned and seemed to be thinking about something. "It seems that Colton has taken her away." Daisy pulled him. "Knowles, did something happen between Colton and Freya?" He squinted and smiled. "It's difficult for me to explain it to you." At the hotel, Freya was pushed into the entryway. She was caught off guard as an approaching figure trapped her in a corner of the room, and his cold aura enveloped her. Colton grabbed her chin, lifted her face, and asked, "After hiding from me for 3 years, why didn't you continue to hide?" Her heart skipped a beat, and she avoided his gaze. "I wasn't hiding." "Oh, really?" He turned her face, forcing her to look at him. "You blocked me on social media, moved away from where you lived, and went MIA. Are you toying with me?" His gloomy aura felt extremely oppressive to her, but there was nowhere to escape. The face reflected in her pupils looked more mature, handsome, and composed than 3 years ago. The anger, the chill, and the raging wrath hidden at the bottom of his eyes surged and emerged as if she had betrayed him. She had indeed done something wrong. Her mistake was that she had not stopped the absurdity from taking place 3 years ago. "Colton Goldman, there's no need for us to contact each other." "What did you just say?" His gaze became gloomier. She chuckled. "We only had a one-night stand. Could it be that you, the second heir of the Goldmans, are still brooding about such an incident?" Colton's facial outline looked cold and stiff, while his eyes looked freezing cold and murderous as if it was about to penetrate her soul. So, are you saying that you were playing with me? She tightened the hands that were resting on both sides of her body and forced a smile. You make it sound like I cheated on your feelings, but can you tell me what was my relationship with you before that? After saying that, she turned her face away and added, it was just that I drank too much that night, and both of us went with the tide purely out of lust. As soon as she said that, the grip on her jawline tightened all of a sudden as Colton pinched her cheeks with his fingertips while approaching her. Both of us only went with the tide, and we did all that purely out of lust? Freya Pruitt, are you sure you were drunk that night? Yes. He sneered. Were you unconscious? Freya did not answer his question. He placed his palms on the back of her head, and clasped the back of her neck, and the veins on the back of his hands were clearly visible. So you didn't reject me that night. You even took the initiative to come at me. Does that mean that as long as you're drunk, any man will have a chance at it? Freya stopped breathing for a short while, and she was unable to loosen her clenched hands. It has nothing to do with you. Very good. He scoffed, but there was not even a hint of hilarity in his eyes. Freya Pruitt, you win. He pinched her chin and approached her. Since you're so promiscuous and can be with whoever you want, then I bet you get it on with me now. She was astonished. What? Colton picked her up, and she struggled. Colton Goldman, what do you think you're doing? Walking into the bedroom, he threw her onto the bed and pulled off his tie expressionlessly. I'm doing what you do best. Freya got up and wanted to escape, but she was hauled back, and he trapped her within his limbs and started kissing her. Her hands were propped against his chest as she tried to push him away from her, but she was clamped between him and the bed and was unable to move. Colton. The sudden pain that came from her lower abdomen made her gasp. He did not even give her a sign before that. She bit his shoulder, and Colton seemed to feel no pain as all he wanted at the moment was to occupy her from head to toe. In the evening, Freya sat on the bed with her legs bent. Her messy clothes and makeup made her look very flustered and defeated. Chapter 1879. Freya stared out the window in a daze. It's just like that morning from 3 years ago. He had just disappeared after I woke up. He left without saying anything after sleeping with me. Who would know what his attitude is? In fact, I never forgot what happened that night 3 years ago. I wasn't so drunk that I was unconscious. I was sober. Sometimes I'd rather be unconscious that night, so I didn't remember everything that happened so clearly. It's like it's been engraved in my mind, and I can't get it off my mind no matter what, and every time I think about it, I regret that I called him while I was drunk that night. I also regret that I didn't push him away. Because I really didn't know how to face him after that night, that's why I've kept on hiding from him. Anyway, it was a mistake from the very beginning, and I thought that I could stop this mistake just by hiding as Colton might forget what happened after such a long time. However, unexpectedly, Freya pulled her hair back and covered her forehead with her palm. How can everything end like this? She freshened herself, tidied her clothes, walked into the living room, and took her cell phone out of her bag. The screen showed 5 missed calls and 3 text messages that came from Daisy. She called Daisy back. After a while, Daisy answered the call. Freya, where has Colton taken you to? And are you all right? Freya lowered her gaze. I'm fine. You don't have to worry about me. Freya, did something happen between you and Colton? Why is Colton so mad? Daisy had found Colton and asked him about Freya's whereabouts, but Colton told her to leave him alone and said that that was what Freya owed him. What exactly do I owe him? Who knows? He's mad? Freya bit her lip and felt even more depressed. I'm not mad about him at this point. What is he mad about? That crazy bastard. Where are you now? Freya found a reason to prevaricate. I'm staying at a hotel for now. I'll come to find you tomorrow. After finishing the call, Freya took a deep breath, picked up her bag, and walked up to the door. As soon as she opened the door, she found 2 bodyguards waiting outside the door. One of the bodyguards looked at her. Miss Pruitt, Mr. Goldman forbids you from leaving this room. Freya was startled. What do you mean by he forbids me from leaving? The bodyguard replied, this is what Mr. Goldman wants. I'm going out for a meal. We'll make dinner reservations for you. If you still need anything, you can let us know at any time. Freya was rendered speechless. On the other side of Bassburg, at the Goldman mansion. During dinner, the butler came over and reported that Colton had guests that he needed to entertain tonight and would be back later. Maisie took a glance at Nolan. Your son looks just like you now. He has become a workaholic. How do you expect him to find us a daughter-in-law if he continues to live his life like this? Nolan smiled and fetched her some vegetables. Our son is still young. Being a little busier is nothing to someone his age. Daisy lowered her head and ate her dinner as millions of ideas were flashing across her mind. It was not until Maisie placed her favorite shrimp on her plate. Daisy, I heard that Knowles has become one of the shareholders of Tenet. Why didn't you bring him back for a meal? Nolan frowned. Yes, that kid has been spying on my Daisy. I really didn't expect him to really succeed in only 3 years. Daisy responded, Knowles is still busy. Perhaps in a few more days? Nolan snorted. What is he busy with? He's been claiming that he wants to marry you all this while. I won't mind it if he wants to go back on his word. I don't even feel like marrying my daughter to him. That kid has found himself a treasure this time around. Maisie glanced at him and chuckled. Even our daughter isn't in a hurry. Why are you in such a hurry? Nolan's tone became serious. I'm not in a hurry. It's just that I'm not very satisfied with his attitude. Chapter 1880. Maisie smiled without saying a word. After so many years, does he think that I can't see through him at one glance? He's just being duplicitous. I don't think he can pick out another son-in-law candidate that can outshine Knowles at this moment. Moreover, Knowles is not only an outstanding young man but also good-looking. So if he doesn't allow his own daughter to get married to this man, then it's only a matter of time before some other ladies reach out to snatch Knowles away from Daisy. Thus, it's a good thing for Daisy to make a move earlier. The prosperous city was filled with radiant neon lights as darkness overcast the sky. In the brightly lit Glitz Club, the people were dancing, drinking, and partying to the fullest, and in the VIP room, Colton was discussing projects with a few foreign clients. The businesses that Black Gold had its hands in were unlimited, such as entertainment, construction, tourism development, food and beverages, hospitality, technological R&D, and so on. That was how it became a giant in the business circle. Its strength should never be underestimated. The other party was very happy to be able to collaborate with Black Gold, especially knowing that the second heir of the Goldmans was interested in their stereoscopic 3D holographic projection technology. They were the ones who first held out an olive branch. After the discussion of the collaboration, the assistant sent the other party out of the private room and then returned to the private room. Mr. Goldman, are you going back to the Goldman mansion? No. Colton lowered his gaze, put the wine glass down, picked up his jacket, got up, and walked out of the private room. Take me to the hotel. The assistant went to get the car. Colton walked out of the clubhouse, and the assistant pulled the car over and stopped in front of him. He opened the door and got in the car. The car drove forward slowly, turned at the junction, and disappeared into the street. In a car parked not far away, Knowles had his legs crossed, and there was a laptop on his thighs. The laptop screen just happened to display a blueprint of the stereoscopic 3D holographic projection technology. He had a Bluetooth headset in his left ear and was on a call. The other party reported something to him, and he responded indifferently, "Thank you for the effort." After finishing the call, Edison glanced at the rearview mirror. "Mr. Knowles, why don't you take the initiative to discuss this collaboration with Mr. Goldman himself?" Knowles scoffed. "Judging from his and his father's temperament, they would toy me to death if they were to know that I want to work with Black Gold. You're the Goldman's future son-in-law. Why would you want to collaborate with the Black Gold Group? Edison was puzzled. He gave off a faint chuckle. Everyone wants to cooperate with a stronger company, and I'm no exception. After saying that, he remembered something. Make an appointment for an antique shop for me tomorrow. Edison asked, You wish to go to an antique shop? He loosened his tie. If I want to meet my father-in-law and mother-in-law, I can't go to them empty-handed, can I? In the hotel suite. Colton stood at the entryway. The lights in the living room were still on, and his gaze swept over the dinner on the dining table. It seems that she has eaten. He stepped into the bedroom, the warm yellow floor. Lamp had been turned down, and the dim and warm light was reflected on the person who was sleeping on the bed. Freya lay on her side, with the blanket only covering up to her waist. She looked decent, peaceful, and a little adorable while she was asleep. He stood beside the bed for a while, sat on the edge, and reached out to gently brush the hair on her forehead while his eyes fixed on her sleeping face. 3 years ago, he had left early in the morning because he did not want her to feel embarrassed when she woke up. And after that night, he had assumed she was interested in him. Upon thinking of what Freya said, Colton's eyes turned slightly cold. He got worked up and pinched her face. She hissed and woke up in pain. The moment she opened her eyes, the first thing that caught her eyes was Colton's gloomy face. She sat up in fright and wrapped herself in the blanket. Why are you here? I'm the one who reserved this room, so why can't I be here? He took off his coat. Freya grabbed his hands and pressed them against the bed. Wait a minute. Colton lifted his gaze and glanced at her, but did not utter a single word. She took a deep breath and calmed down. I want to talk to you. What makes you think you're in the position to talk to me?